There's literally hundreds of core exercises out there. And I bet you're thinking to yourself, which core exercises should I do? Well, the good news is today, I'm gonna show you the only 3 core exercises that you'll ever need. And better than just that, I'm not just gonna show you one variation, I'm gonna show you a beginner, intermediate, and advanced variation of each one of these moves. Now, why are these 3 moves so critical for developing core strength? Well, a lot of core movements out there focus on this forward and backward movement, otherwise known as the sagittal plane. But we don't want to just strengthen the core muscles in the sagittal plane using movements like planks, for example. Instead, what we really want to do is we want to strengthen those core muscles in the sagittal plane, but we also want to do the lateral plane and the transverse or rotational plane. And so what does that mean? If all we're doing is the sagittal plane, then all we're doing is strengthening these muscles right here on the front side of the core. Now, if we start moving laterally, all of a sudden we activate these muscles on the sides of the core, which helps stabilize the trunk and the spine, reducing back pain and making you even stronger. And then if we start doing the transverse plane, well, guess what? Then we get into all these little muscles on the inside, and we get into all the muscles on the back side of the body as well. So follow along, pick whether you want to do a beginner, intermediate, or advanced variation of each one of these moves, and then you can practice these moves 3 days a week to develop a strong core and know that you've got the only 3 moves that you'll ever need. Core move number 1 is going to be focusing on strengthening the muscle of the core in that sagittal plane, but we're going to do it a little bit different. You see, when people do things like crunches and sit-ups, you overextend and overflex the spine, which sometimes can cause disc injuries and injuries to the nerves in your back, causing lower back pain or SI joint pain. So in order to keep the spine safe, what we want to do is keep the spine in one piece while we move the legs instead. So for the beginner variation, what you're going to do is a move called the reverse crunch. So here's how it works. You're going to let your body rest on the ground. You're going to drive your fingertips away from your ears, and then you're going to press your lower back into the ground. Now this is important. This is the most important cue. Your lower back should be pressed into the ground the entire time to the point where you can't fit your fingertips under your lower back, all right? Now from there, you can either lift your head, relax your head back like this, or put it on the pillow, okay? Fingertips away from ears, palms toward the sky, lower back pushing the ground. You're gonna lift both knees up into this position. Now you're gonna tap your heels down and come back up. We're gonna inhale as we go down, exhale as we come back up. Again, keeping the lower back pushed into the ground the entire time. Now, if you can do this for 1 minute with perfect form, meaning you don't lift that lower back off the ground and everything feels good, then you can go to the next variation, an intermediate variation, called the lying leg raise. For this one, we're gonna do it with the legs straight. So you're gonna bring the legs up, lower back pushing the ground, fingertips away from the ears, palm towards the sky, extend the legs, point the toes, and squeeze the legs together. From there, you're gonna bring your legs down, not letting the lower back come up, and then back up, compressing the thighs towards your body. So the more we can squeeze the thighs towards the body, the more we're gonna activate that core. Inhaling down, exhaling up, squeezing the core at the top, just like this, okay? Now, if you can do leg raises with your legs straight and your feet together, again, with perfect form, keeping the lower back pressed on the ground, the next step is to try a variation which is advanced called the V-up. Now, V-ups start by lifting your torso and your legs off the ground at the same time, and the goal is to achieve a balanced position at the top. So we'll start this movement in a full hollow position with our arms overhead, thumbs pointed down, lower back pushing the ground, and legs fully extended and squeezed together with toes pointed. So it looks like this. So from here, we're gonna explode up, touch our toes, try to find a balance point for just a fraction of a second, and then come back down. We're gonna inhale as we come back, exhale as we come up, try to create as much compression at the top as possible. This is one of the best ways to strengthen your core, an amazing move that will strengthen your core to a level that is so high that you won't have to do any other core moves for that sagittal plane. But next, let's move on to the lateral plane. Okay, this next set of movements is focused on the lateral or side-to-side plane. And the goal is to strengthen the muscles on the sides of the core and perhaps even activate the muscles underneath the armpits and on the sides of the hips as well. So for the beginner variation, I'm going to be pointing out some really important tips to help you activate all those muscles so you can carry them forward into the intermediate and advanced versions as well. So to start out, we're going to do a high chair side plank. And at first, people often don't feel this in the right places. So pay attention to what I'm sharing with you because it will make you feel these muscles here and underneath your armpits if you follow the instructions. So what we're gonna do is this. Make sure you have a nice sturdy chair next to us. Something we can push up against, we can lean up against, and it's not gonna slide out like this, okay? So nice sturdy chair for you. Bring your feet together, pointed straight forward, place one hand on the chair, and come into a position where you have a straight line between your ankles, all the way through your hips and your belly button, all the way through the top of your head and through your nose. Now right here, what most people will do is feel their shoulder muscles doing the work. And the reason why is because you're trying to hold this position by pushing your arm out this way. So you're effectively pushing up like this to hold that position. Well, we're gonna reverse that. Instead of pushing up with your arm, I want you to pull down with your arm, almost imagining like you're trying to drag the chair towards your thigh. And immediately what will happen is you'll feel all these muscles underneath your armpits and on the side of your core start to fire. The more you squeeze, the more you'll feel those muscles doing their job. So same thing, side plank position. Now we're gonna push the hand down into the ground and immediately we're gonna start to feel those muscles fire. What's beautiful about this simple variation is even if you are advanced, you can do this beginner variation just to work on reactivating those muscles and doing the future versions with good form. If you can hold this for 60 seconds while keeping that tension active, meaning pulling the hand towards the thigh the entire time, well then we can move down to the next variation, which is a more intermediate version, okay? So from that position, we're gonna come down to our side like this, and you can do this either on your elbow or on your hand. For some people, they prefer the elbow because their wrist hurts. For some people, they prefer the hand because it's a little bit easier. Pick a variation, stick with it, okay? From there, you're gonna bring your knees right on top of each other. I'm gonna use my elbow down on the ground. I'm gonna lift my hips toward the sky, and I'm gonna open the knees ever so slightly, this time activating the muscles on the outside of the hip. Now remember, in the side plank position, even kneeling like this, I don't wanna be holding that position by pushing my shoulder up. Instead, I wanna imagine dragging my elbow towards my ribs and pulling my shoulder down like this. Again, activating all those important muscles on the side of the body. So, one more time. I'm here. Maybe I'm pushing up to start. Now I pull the elbow back towards my ribs and I feel those muscles activate like crazy. And I'm gonna hold this position while breathing shallow into the belly and really feeling all the muscles on this side of my body firing the entire time. Now, if I can hold this for 60 seconds on both sides with good form while maintaining that active lat, the arm pulled back like this, then we can go to the advanced variation. And for the advanced variation, we're gonna do this with our legs fully extended and our hand planted flat on the ground. The most common mistake I see people making with this advanced version is that they internally rotate their shoulder. So they either put their fingertips pointing forwards or they turn their shoulder inward like this. We don't wanna make that mistake. So we turn our fingertips away from us. And as we come into the position, we're gonna turn the pit of the elbow towards those fingertips as much as we can. So externally rotating the shoulder. That's gonna protect the shoulder and make this a better movement for you. From there, stack the feet like this right on top of each other. Find yourself in the position, straight line between your ankles, through your belly button, through the top of your head, and then activate the lats just like before and squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Work up to holding this for a full minute on the right side and a full minute on the left side, and you will have built a strong lateral core, and you won't need other moves to strengthen that plane of motion. Now, the final movement that's going to address this transverse or rotational plane of movement is going to be a series of marching, mountain climbers, and sit-outs. And I'll show you how to do these all with perfect form. But before we get there, I want to describe something really important because a lot of people think that strengthening the rotational plane of motion means having to actually go through the rotational plane of motion. But this is one of the most vulnerable planes of motion for your spine. So what we often find is people do things like Russian twists and movements like this with a medicine ball, and guess what? You could be putting torque on your lower back, compressing the disc, and causing pain in your lower back, your SI joint, or even nerve damage at the same time. So instead of actually rotating, what we want to do with the transverse plane is fix the upper body and learn how to rotate the lower body around it. Anytime we find a stable position, we lift a single joint, and it makes it so that we want to roll, but we don't, we're resisting rotation. And by resisting rotation, we're strengthening the transverse plane without risking injury to our back, okay? So the first variation of this is a simple movement called high chair marching. It's gonna start out by placing your hands on a nice sturdy surface or chair that's about hip height, okay? From there, we're gonna come back to a plank position, and what's important here is that we keep the pelvis in a good spot. The pelvis shouldn't be down like this, and your butt shouldn't be poking out like this. Instead, I like to tell people to squeeze your glutes and imagine pointing your tailbones towards the ground as you're doing this. Now, to keep the upper body active, just like the side plank, we want to pull that chair or that surface down like this. So instead of pushing forward and up to maintain that position, we want to pull back and down, again, activating the lats and all the muscles of the core, which is going to make this safer, a little bit harder, but also more effective in the long run. From there, we want to hold this position, and we're going to alternate bringing one knee high and coming back down. It's important to think, how high can I lift that knee? Because we want to strengthen all those muscles, the hip flexors, at the same time. as we're transitioning from one leg to the other, what we're doing is we're creating a rotational pattern. So the body wants to do this, but we're fighting it by maintaining a good position. That is working all the muscles transversely around the body, okay? Now, if you can do this with good form while maintaining active lats by pushing the hands into the chair for a full minute, then you can move to the intermediate variation, which is exactly the same, only we're gonna bring it down to the floor and do a mountain climber. So, come back into the plank position, squeeze the glutes, squeeze the core, activate the lats by dragging the hands towards the thighs, and then lift the knee and come back down. Lift the knee, come back down. And try to not let the hips wiggle from side to side like this relative to your shoulders. The hips should stay nice and perpendicular to the ground the entire time. Now, as you get better at this, you can go a little bit faster and make it more of a cardiovascular movement at the same time. If you can do this with perfect form for a full minute, and I've got one more variation for you. It's a bit challenging on coordination, but if you learn it, it's probably one of the best moves for the transverse plane of your core. It's called the sit out, okay? So for the sit out, I'm gonna turn my body and I'm gonna come to a bear plank position. So hands are on the ground, and this time, instead of having my legs way out backwards, I'm gonna lift the knees off the ground in this position, just like this, okay? Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna twist my body, and it's important here, I'm not twisting my hips and keeping my spine the same. My whole body, my spine from my hips to my head, stays in one position, rigid and tight the entire time I do this movement, okay? I'm gonna twist my body, lift my hand off the ground, I'm gonna roll around, and I'm gonna lift my toes toward the sky and come to this position. I'm gonna roll back to the start position. I'm gonna do the same thing, lift and twist. I'm gonna roll back to the start position, just like this. I'm gonna inhale. As I go out, I'm gonna exhale. As I come back, one more time. This time you can watch my feet, how my feet rotate together all the way through, and my feet rotate back to the start position together, all right? So this one might take a little bit of practice to get that coordination, but again, that sit out is one of the best advanced moves for that transverse plane of motion, so you don't need any other moves to strengthen that motion. All right, there you have it, the only 3 core moves that you will ever need. Now, another area of your body that you probably want to strengthen, if you're already strengthening your core, is the other strong area that helps you do anything you want in your life, which is your glutes. So, if you're having trouble strengthening your glutes or even activating them in the first place, watch this video right here, because when you have strong glutes and a strong core, guess what? You will be strong, all right? Otherwise, if you like these moves and you want to know how to put them into action in a follow-along workout that you can do from home, well, that's what we do at WeShape, giving you the right variation of the movement, meaning beginner, intermediate, or advanced variations for you, and assembling them into a follow-along video workout that you can follow along to from the comfort of your own home. You can try it out for free. If you want to do that, all you got to do is click the link below.